jump forward here into our slide deck, and I will do the whole sponsored by slide so we can get the formalities out of the way. So as you guys might know, for the folks that are joining us today, we are the Iron Edge Group. We've been in business about 15 years. We've had our BI practice going here for a little over 5 years. Before that, we had an informal process that we would use to provide reporting for audit and compliance-minded organizations, larger companies. So we've been doing reporting for most of the 15 years we've been here, whether it's FINRA, FDIC, SOX, PCI compliance stuff. So really our focus is trying to help people understand what they've got and to provide them peace of mind that the data that they're looking for to make decisions with is solid. So a lot of compliancy, a lot of information on how to take information that you've got in your systems and visualize it and get it out to your team so that they can use it and get smart. We'll do everything from actually doing the projects to build out the dashboards to what we call BI as a service, which is essentially a contingency that you put in place where you can utilize our team a certain number of hours per month, and we'll help you build your reports and train your team and work alongside them so that they get smart on all things business intelligence with Power BI. Did I miss anything, George? Anything?
That was good.
Okay, cool. So now on to the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today. So today, everybody's like, I'm going to start a Power BI program within my organization, right? Because, Power BI is the hotness and it's inexpensive. Like how much did it used to cost to put like a business intelligence program together? Like, were we talking like, it wasn't like $10 per person per month, right? It was a lot.
Oh, so
millions.
First project included, yes, millions. But other than that, yeah, you think about all the database level licensing that you had to go and buy. Basically, you had to section off an entire corner of your on-premise data system for database servers, application servers, failover equipment, test environments, dev environments, all of that stuff. You'd end up with. Yeah, it wasn't hard. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say you could end up with 12 servers just to run your on-premise BI.
And it was like almost impossible for people to go directly into source data because of the tax that it would put on those systems, right?
That's right.
You'd be running those queries directly against the SQL databases. And so so then everybody was like, well, like Power BI is awesome. Like I do pivot tables. And so I can do Power BI, and I personally have what I think are some excellent Power BI reports that I've written, and I'm very proud of them when I'm working in them quietly in my own little office here doing my thing. And then every now and again, I'll get with George and I'll be like, hey, George, I've got this thing, and I'll show it to him, and his face all scrunches up. And I realize that my report is dirty, and that just because I know how to mess around inside of Power BI a little bit doesn't mean that the data that I have is super accurate for the rest of the organization, right? Or that it's built in such a way that other people understand my visualizations. Like, it's something I made for me and it's helpful. I think what other people start to feel like is that once they get to that point that, well, then if I can do it, other people can do it, right?
But you are the citizen BI developer at Iron Edge, though. That's a key role, and we'll talk about that.
Cool. So I think that a lot of people feel like it's fairly simple, right? I've got a couple of developers who are already on staff. Power BI is just Power BI, right? And we'll either approach it the same way we normally would a BI engagement, right? Where, and we'll get into kind of what those traditional business intelligence programs look like, or what they would do is oversimplify and say, well, this is just a really great UX. And if I just port it towards those data tables, I can pull out what I need, and then I'll just mash it up, and it'll be something that I can get out to everybody. And because of that, what we find is that just like Elon Musk realizes, on a fairly regular basis with his space program, like there is a failure to launch, right? So, and what we found, right, is in most good organizations, like SpaceX's latest catastrophe that happened, is their goal was to gain learning cycles, right? So although this was a total failure on the launch pad, it provided them some real learning opportunities. And so just for the benefit of all of the people on this webinar moving forward, like we have seen some catastrophic failures, right? In the 20 years that we've been doing technology, and watching what has worked and what has not worked, and then watching that translate from all those different things, whether it was waterfall or standard development processes or into Agile, and then whether you're using like marts, warehouses, lakes, report repositories, whatever that looks like, you take all of that and you combine it down into what we've got now, which is a more modern approach to BI, I guess. Like you've talked about that. Can you elaborate just a little to set the stage here about like why Power BI is different and what that looks like, as far as like you've mentioned it, like, and I can't put my tongue on the exact words that you've used about the difference between this and like traditional BI.
Yeah, so now today everyone talks about the modern data platform and modern BI, but like you said, if we rewind, really not even that long ago, maybe 5-10 years ago, BI and the data platforms looked a lot different, right? Everything was on premise, right? There was a barrier to entry for any company that wasn't at least medium sized or bigger, simply because of the on-premise IT investment you had to make to stand up a BI program. And we talked about that at the outset, just the mini server farm that you had to go out and buy and put in place and maintain just to get started with BI tools. But if we think about how, traditionally how we did BI, right? And this is whether you were doing, Hyperion cubes, SSAS cubes, you were third normal form data warehouse, Ralph Kimball style data marts. They all started off similarly, right? You had your source system data. Then you would have some sort of data mover, right? Some sort of ETL tool, extract, transform, and load. Informatica, SSIS, some of those the other Oracle tools like the Oracle Data Access Client, things like that, right? Really big iron applications that had their own server their own independent server needs and ramifications as well in your data center. Right, those required very specialized people who knew how to do ETL for BI at the time, right? And then once you went and got that data, staged it up, then you could start transforming it and building out your warehouse. This is where the data modelers and data architects came in that would spend hours and months architecting these very purpose-built cubes and warehouses and data marts to serve the needs of the customer. And then once that was done, right, then you had your visualization layer, right? Whether it was back in the old days where it was a S-Base Analyzer, ProClarity, right? If you have an extensive Microsoft background, OBIEE more recently, tools like that, right? All heavy duty tools that you'd put in place, right? So you would have, and all of that required very specialized people with very specialized talent, and even more specifically, right? If you talk about the business need, the requirement to do all of that modeling, all of that data transformation, you had to go and elicit every single use case that could possibly exist for the customer, as if that was possible, right? And have that defined so that the ETL developers, the modelers, and the data visualization experts could go and put together this solution to meet the needs. That was something that took a vast amount of time. Oftentimes, depending on the subject area and the breadth and depth of it, it wasn't unheard of to hear, to have your 18-month project, right, to get your first taste of BI out the door for your customer.
Well, that doesn't, like, I mean, so that sounds super cumbersome, right? And I do remember a lot of that, especially when, back in the day I was dealing with like GIS data and stuff and visualization overlays and piping in information from different places and being able to, I would say, which is a term I know you hate, which is a whole nother podcast that we're going to do called Things George Hates. But I know it prevents people from what we've affectionately used to call riffing on information, right? Like it prevents, I think, and I guess probably a more professional way of putting is data exploration in some way, right?
It does. No, it does, right? So there was, and I think what you're alluding to is, so someone starts using the tool and it inevitably happens, right? Within weeks of go live, right? They have, okay, this is great. You've answered all my questions. But what about this? Okay, well, that's a change request. We have to run that back through governance. We
Hmm.
have to potentially re-engineer the ETL, the data model, and the visualization layer. So, yes, we would love to do that change, right? It's super interesting, super impactful, but it's going to be 3 months from now, right? That was the world we were in not too long ago. And then when we talk about kind of modern BI and modern data cloud platforms, it's really all it's really all evolved, right, to where everything is, it's just so much faster. If you think about Power BI, it's an all-in-one tool that a single analyst can use to go out and acquire data, model data, and then visualize it, right? If you talk about the underlying like cloud modern data platform, things have changed. There's ELTs, not I mean ETLs, not the approach anymore. It's ELT, right? Extract, load, and then transform. And then the transform is done kind of schema on read using a tool like Power BI. So you're not going and instantiating that physical, not necessarily instantiating that physical model in the database. So it's just rapid change is a thing that you can do. It opens up all manner of possibilities when you're talking about your delivery model and iterative development and just getting value out the door.
And I think it's important to realize, as you had talked about, the consolidation of technologies from having to have different stacks, and specialists within each stack, right? OBIE is an immense product with a lot to understand, and even other programs that had come along kind of to start paving the way towards what Power BI would become, like Tableau. Like there are massive amounts of information that have to be gleaned from being able to do a visualization on systems, right? On top of your transform stack, on top of your just your source data infrastructure, and you've got all these different places where people really have to understand as they model, as they visualize, as they do this. Each different person has to understand how that works, and you have to have people who are governing the program, who understand the technical but the business, right? So you've got business analysts and all that. And so each one of these systems requires these resources. So the natural thing that's happened with this modernization of BI and the Power BI stack is you've consolidated these technologies. And so I think that it's an excellent segue into the first thing that really needs to be considered so that you prevent this failure to launch that we talked about, which is your resource pool, right? And who those people are, because naturally, if you're going to consolidate resource systems into a single application, you're at some point going to have to consolidate resources, right? And so I think that takes us into this idea of a T-shaped resource, which is something that you introduced me to, and I love the way that you talk about it. So I'd love for you to bring everybody else up to speed. Like, what is a T-shaped resource, and why are they that important to building up an effective Power BI program, and why do we think they're kind of like step one, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I would love to take credit for the term T-shaped resource, but this is something that we borrow from Agile Scrum, right? So the whole idea of the T-shaped resource is you have certain domains that you need for business intelligence, right? So if we think about the top bar of the T, right, you need to have people who know something about data engineering, data modeling, data visualization, um, actually business domain knowledge, right? So those are kind of the categories that we have running on the top of our T. Now the leg of the T, right, that we have here, that's really the depth within each of those categories. So as much as we'd love to have total experts, right, in every single one of those categories, it's not realistic, right? So the thought is everyone has their areas of strength, and you leverage that, but you also spend time to cross train them across the width of the T, right? Those domain areas that you need, where you need expertise, right? And that the thinking is that gives you a lot more flexibility with your resourcing and your project delivery, and ultimately it should make for a more interesting career for your people, right? And kind of what I mean by, flexibility with your projects is, typically we think about the old way. An ETL developer could only do ETL development, right? A data modeler only did data modeling. So you had to have these, teams of people, always had to have a team of people working together. Not that that's bad, but with the T-shaped resource, you have people who can flip flop between different roles and give you a lot more flexibility.
And that's why we had this slide up, because as funny as we were going through this
Hmm.
a few days ago in our program prep, I started laughing because I was like, on the infrastructure side of the house, right? On the consulting side of the house, we call those unicorns, right? And it's because they're mythical creatures that don't exist in real life, right? They're really good at a lot of different things, and they can effectively communicate, and they know a little bit about business, and they're also technical, and they help make good decisions. Like when you find one, you immediately tame it, you bring it into your fold, and you try to make it a part of your team immediately. And they're rare. They're really, really rare. um but what I've noticed with George's team is he's got unicorns on his team. And I'll be honest with you, when we brought some of those team members on board, they didn't start off as unicorns. They were very good at a lot of different things. And so I was kind of teasing George. I was like, so did you just find raw unicorns, or like what do you do and how do you replicate that? Because it sounds like T-shaped resources are really hard to find, right?
Yeah, so I'll share, just share a little bit of what we do at Iron Edge to try to, we're not perfect, but to do our best to try to make that happen, right? So we have, from a career planning perspective, right? Number one, we don't do the we don't there's multiple points of feedback through the year in career planning. We on our BI team, we have department level kind of strategic meetings once a month, and then we have individual one-on-one meetings with between me and the people on my team once a month as well. So twice a month they're getting feedback on where we need to go as a department and how we get there, and where they need to go individually, balanced with their own interests and in career desires. Kind of furthermore, one of the things, when I first came on, that Andrew and I worked on together, is we actually built out a matrix, this giant matrix of our expectations for people at their different at every different level, so people could, there was transparency, right? You weren't necessarily being promoted or given a raise because of some unknown reason, right? You can look at this giant spreadsheet, and you can see a progression plan and what you need to do to get from point A to point B. So that was really, that was our approach to it. And then honestly, we've hired some good people, right, using a process that was already in place when I got here to identify talent. And then they're people that are open to coaching, deal well with ambiguity, and are just passionate about data, and that
But
helps.
the one of the things that I think is really interesting that you talked about yesterday, right? So when I on the operations, on the managed services side of the house, right, and whereas other CTOs and CIOs work within their organizations, when I look to hire folks, sometimes I'll see something where somebody doesn't know anything about technology, right? But they've got a degree in, um, like, let's say they've got a degree in political science, or they have a degree in um, engineering, right? Or they have this thing that, and as I talk to them, I realize, oh, they're just truth seekers. Like these
Hmm.
people are like interested in how things work, like questions like, you ever taken something apart just to see how it works? And they're like, yeah, like I do that. I used to do that as a kid all the time. It's like, okay, like you're curious, right? And I realize that, obviously it's not a huge shock because we're in the same company, but from a culture standpoint, that's a lot what you were talking about, right, George? Like kind of,
That's right.
you don't have to have somebody that comes out with a degree in data science, right?
No, yeah, no, correct. I think just about any analytical discipline can fit into this, right? So, for me, yeah, right. I have my undergrad was in MIS. I've done a lot of programming, went back and got a master's in data science, and that's great, right? But you don't necessarily have to have that as your background. People from the world of liberal arts who do a lot of, type of statistical type of analysis, a lot of, kind of, quests for truth, right? So people who can really take a problem, sink their teeth into it, and analytically walk from start to finish, right? Those people are invaluable. Those are people who can become data analysts, BI developers, data experts.
And then if you really want to, kind of continue down that road, once you've figured out like what your expectations are of them, then there's training, which I
Hmm.
will we'll get into. But there's opportunities out there. There's so much free training available. It blows my mind. Good quality, not like I'm sharing somebody's CBT nuggets password training. Like good training, and we'll get into that in a second as we'll talk about the tech and some of the other parts of it. And I know your eyes lit up. Is there something you want to add to that?
No, it's just like, I follow Mark Cuban's blog and things like that, and that's one of the things that he put out years ago that I really believe in, right? Because one of the things he said is really in this world that we live in today with the freedom of information that we have, there's really no excuse for to hold up your hand and saying I have to be trained before I can do that. Yeah, that obviously if you want to go and do brain surgery, you need some training. But there to be a Power BI developer, not that it's easy, but there is so much out there to where you can go and really have a good solid understanding and foundation of the tool before ever doing your first project.
But in fairness, nothing beats, in my opinion,
Hmm.
nothing beats good old fashioned scar tissue.
I agree.
Nothing beats, getting in there and, as we showed earlier, like breaking something, right, constructively. Um, and that doesn't happen without putting together a a framework for
Hmm.
success within the group, right?
That's
So
right.
it's imperative that people understand that in order to be successful, you can't just find people that are unicorns and be like, let's go do some
Hmm.
BI, right? Because all hell will break loose. And you've got this new product that's built in a completely different way. So what George's team recommends and what we think is the right way to approach this is agile, right? And I know that's the hotness for the last 10 years. Everybody's like agile, 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 agile. But in this instance, used in a more um, correlated way to what agile really is, which is just super flexibility and some of the other things that come with that, and low documentation and quick turnaround and working on sprints and stuff. Like, you can build a program around this, and I think that's the game changer in success to BI projects because of the way that they're able to turn around deliverables, right? Like, just get something out there.
No, I agree, and kind of when we first started off the webinar talking about how hard it was and how much time it took to build BI, even just 5, 6, 7 years ago, that's been totally turned on its head, right? The guidance on BI and Agile, 5, 6, 7 years ago was you can be it's possible to be agile, right? It's possible after you've laid all the infrastructure and got that first giant project out of the gate. Then you can start. Then you might be able to start iterating on requirements, right? And yeah, to a certain extent you could, but it was very hard to just come out of the gate with that because you had to have that consolidated data model built. And we already talked about how much how many resources and how expensive and how time consuming it was. But with a tool like a flexible tool like Power BI that's you know eh, capable of being an all-in-one acquisition, modeling, and visualization tool with that flexible schema on read that kind of lives in memory. Now you have that opportunity to really iterate and do 1 week cycles, 2 week cycles, 4 week cycles. To me it does. Yeah, I think a lot of people get caught up in the commands of agile, and when people say agile they usually mean scrum. But for me it's let's just get something out fast. It doesn't matter if it's a one week cycle or a 4 week cycle. Just get in the habit of iteratively delivering value, something that people can use.
Well, and this is gonna. So here's the dirty secret that I'm gonna share with everybody here. That everybody, I think, somewhat already kind of knows. There is no BI program without funding,
Hmm.
right? And there is no funding without some interest. And I can tell you that I've seen more CIOs lose their jobs due to a bad ERP implementation, not due to the process side of it, but due to the data extract and reporting side of it, right? And so the goal should always be, when you're trying to implement Agile in these systems, it's not to do it because it's the hotness and it's because it's a framework. Like, you can do waterfall frames, or you can build any type of framework you want, but specifically with data, what our team has found and what we strongly recommend is, you got a group of people that get together, right? And somebody goes, we need BI. And then they go, okay, well, we've got a bunch of like citizen BI guys running around already, right? Myself and, my buddy Mark here at work, and all of us, we're already kind of using Power BI. So somebody in the company says, okay, well, how much will it cost for us to do this BI program? And let's just throw out a nice round number. Somebody goes, it'll be $1 million for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, we're going to have all this awesome stuff. Or it's $2 million for 2 years. And so we're like, okay, cool. $2 million for 2 years, project approved. Let's go. So a bunch of people who have a lot of money put $2 million on the table to start being able to make better decisions. And then what happens? So then somebody's in charge and starts doing it waterfall, and they start doing it the old way. And then you're at 6 months and somebody's like, hey, where are we at on the BI project? Can I see a report? And they're like, nah, we're still building the warehouse. Now we got everything extracted. Like, we found some anomalies. Like, we're still gathering requirements. 9 months, right? We got it all in there. We're starting to put some marks together. We're still working on some security contacts. Like, can you got any visuals? Not yet. We're doing some wireframes. Maybe we can show you what it might look like. And then a little before 12 months, as George said, the sales team is like, we picked a new CRM, right? It is part of our plan for next year. So, we got to start over because all the CRM data is not flowing through over to the operations data properly. And then you're 12 months into it, and your stakeholders all get together for their annual meeting. You've spent $1.4 million in the first year, and there's no reports. That's what happens, right? So you've got to have some sort of system. Like, Power BI is built, when their tagline originally was 5 minutes to wow. And it was built to do data exploration. And it's evolved into a full-on analytics application, right? So, the art of Agile, right? Using sprints, focusing on bite-sized chunks, getting something meaningful in the hands of the users. That, to me, right, is the most important part of it, right, George? Like, because if you can start getting stuff in people's hands, they start to play with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of people get caught up with, again, a lot of the dogma of Agile Scrum is a lot of people have a very black and white interpretation of it. Is, okay, to do Scrum, I have to deliver something to production every 2 weeks. Even the makers of Scrum, right? The people who got together in that group of noblemen and magistrates that got together and built the Scrum framework. Really, even they've backed off of that recently, right? So the term potentially shippable has replaced a production deliverable. So just get something to someone that they can use, and if they can't use it in production, they can get you feedback.
Learning cycles, which I can't. When I was introduced to the concept 10 years ago or longer, I guess, of minimum viable product, of MVP,
Mm-hmm.
the goal of just getting something and going, do I like this? Right? Like, it is, I mean, I can tell you, like, it's helped me in my marriage. Because, like, if my wife is like, I need you to do this thing for me, I've gotten really good at drawing. I'm like, if I drew what the room would look like if I installed that, does that look like what you want? She goes, no, I don't like that. So I've got my MVP, right? So you have to do that in production when you're dealing with the stuff that people are asking for, specifically with data, because they're going to go, I want this. I'm like, I don't think you want that report. Like, no, this is what I want. This, and then when they look at it, they go, oh, no, actually, it doesn't really answer my question. It's a vanity metric, right? Oh, I know how many tickets we closed last month. Cool. Did that help you at all? No. They didn't answer my question about why we're so busy. Okay. Answered your. So those things are super, super important with Agile, because people can actually look at that super fast and go, oh, and, or they look at it and be like, that's exactly what I wanted. Can you do this now? which I think is critical. So you can start building your backlog, right? And prioritizing with your stakeholders. And then, then your stakeholders are like, hey, we've approved this big budget and this huge project. This is awesome. When can we start using this? Then there's anticipation, right? And especially with Power BI, because it's tactile. Like that's the coolest part about it. Like you can get in and touch it and move it and open it and drill into it, right? So the agile part of it makes it really neat because it could just be this perfunctory visual where it's just a bar graph and they're like, cool, tell me this other, like, what if I could click that and it did, could I see all my contract information? You're like, yes, that's our next iteration, right? Our next sprint will get you a drill down. And then poof, all of a sudden now they're touching it, they're moving in it, and they've become part of the experience. And then your stakeholders will continue to allow you the freedom to build out on that. But that comes back to a really important thing that we talk about a lot is understanding the type of project. So first two things we talk about is your people, right? Right, making sure you've got these T-shaped resources and you're building them through and you have plans for them. So taking the time to understand what their plans are. Then you're giving them a framework to be successful in, like how we're going to operate through the process of getting information into people's hands so it's meaningful and getting that feedback and finding your champions within the organization and getting your user adoption up. But the only way you get that user adoption up is if you pick a project that people actually are interested in and you can get results in at the same time, right? So there's this like correlation of things, and you'll hear a lot of people call it things like, low hanging fruit or whatever that is, whatever you want to call it. But in this slide, I'll take probably a more sinister approach to it is we say pick your poison, right? So anything that you choose moving forward could make or break your program, right? You want to have something that comes out that is immediately impactful, right? Is quick to iterate on, right? And is universally understood by people who are paying the bills. That's my position on it. George can probably get more, I don't know, specific within the realm on it, but right.
No, so yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Right. Find that you'll find yeah, I think a lot of times, in my past and, our current customers now, when their first project out the door, a lot of times they start thinking, well, I'm already doing this kind of reporting here on this on this subject area. So I already know that. I already know the requirements. So I'm just going to move that over to Power BI. Personally, I think that's a mistake, right? So I mean, you're really, because at that point you're really you're trying to do too much, right? You're going to have all types of personal change management. You're going to have system from a who moved my cheese perspective of people who've been used to this type of specific type of reporting for months, if not years. You're going to have a different system for training that you're going to have to overcome. All manner of things. So I personally like finding a high impact area that hasn't been solved yet, right? Some new functionality, some new reporting to have that be my first project out the door. And if I can combine that with someone at the high enough, as high as possible the level in my organization, who's a powerful partner, right, to help me get that out the door, who's someone who's passionate about BI, who maybe they do or do not have a background in BI as a user, maybe or just someone who has a passion for data, someone who understands that the way we're doing it now isn't efficient, right? There are better ways to do this. Let's get started with our BI program. That person is a powerful ally.
It's kind of a double-edged sword in that, like, we've seen some success in somebody going, hey, see this really sweet, super awesome Excel spreadsheet that we've built that the whole like department uses, and it's like linked to 15 other spreadsheets, and we want to convert that into a Power BI report. Like, yeah, I don't know that that's like the place that we would always start, although we're happy to help from a program standpoint. Like, okay, we'll jump in and help you try to fix that problem. But like George said, like, you've got a lot of people who are already like accustomed to working in that system. And if it works fairly well, like, don't lift and shift. Don't take something that you're doing and just copy it into Power BI, right? It's akin to the conversation I've had in the past year in our webinars with what I call the philosophy of burning the boats when you go remote, right? Like, don't do what you did at the office in a fully remote capacity, because you're not going to be successful with it. You'll get by. And in a temporary capacity, it'll work okay. But if you're going to shift your work processes to a completely different style, you have to change things with the technology. And that's the same thing with Power BI. You can't just shift from using an Excel spreadsheet with chiclets into Power BI
Hmm.
and then be like, it's just going to work and everybody's going to like it better, because it's not built to do. It can do it, but you're not maximizing it, you know. And you're going to irritate people, so you're not going to get the UX that you're expecting, the user experience, right? You're not going to have that high adoption and um, infection rate, really, which is probably a poor choice of terms in a pandemic. But your goal with these applications is to get people excited about them, is to find these, as George said, these champions within these departments, and get them using some of this, so that they're walking into meetings and going, so let me show you kind of where we're, and not even like bragging about it. Okay, so this is where we're at. I'm gonna bring this up on the screen, or I'm gonna open it up in my Teams or my Zoom meeting, and I'm gonna show you like kind of where we are from a revenue perspective or whatever. And they're like, what is that? Oh, it's just my report. Like, well, I want that. Tell me what it does. And then other people get interested in it, which is super cool. But that also brings me to something that I'm kind of scattered on this particular topic, but it brings to mind that George did make the recommendation that if you're going to pick your poison, stay away from accounting data, right? For a first foray.
Yeah, so that is that's been my, and I've just lived through this, right? I have the like Andrew, like you like to say, I have the scar tissue, right? I've been through the battles and the wars with things like this, and to be kind of more specific, is I've seen this time and time again, right? From people in my network, from places where I've worked in the past, where people want to put their financial reporting. And when I mean financial reporting, I'm talking about your K's and Q's, right? Your balance sheet, income statement, statement of cash flows, things like that. Let's put that in BI also, right? And this is, and these, and that's generally, I get the, I get the reasoning, right? People, and this is generally more of a conversation we have with, smaller to medium-sized businesses who may not be able to make the investment in something as expensive as Hyperion Financial Management, or even Power BI Report Builder, something like that. But really, and I kind of, when I talk about that, right, there's question marks that pop up, right? People always say, well, this is a reporting tool, right? Why can't I do this reporting in my in my BI tool? So BI tools in general, and Power BI being one of them, really they're not meant for pixel perfect reporting, right? So your K's and Q's, right? If you're a publicly traded company and you have to post that out there, those are pixel perfect reports, right? They have to look a certain way. They have to have certain elements. You have to be able to footnote and subnote things like that, right? They're really not meant for interactive analysis. So keep those out of your BI tool. We're a Microsoft shop mostly, so there are other tools for those types of reports like SSRS, Microsoft's Power BI Report Builder, things like that, where those pixel perfect reports belong. Accounting data in general, if you're doing financial analysis, right, from an operational perspective, that's perfect for Power BI, right?
Mhm.
And I think if we talk about finance in general, right, these people are in accountants, right? these people are great targets to be like your citizen data scientists, right? These are people who understand data, who understand math, who understand the formulas that they need to put in. These are the people with the super complex spreadsheets, right? Who should be able to, transition to what goes on in Power BI with writing those DAX formulas and things like that. So I think, as opposed to, so we've talked about pixel perfect reporting and not putting your financial statements in Power BI. I think another time what we see with finance is that accountants really just want their data, and that's why I say maybe don't start off building interactive dashboards for them. Train them how to fish, right? Train them how to go out and get their own data using Power BI their own way, and then show them how it works. Show them the power of the tool. Let them evolve into citizen BI developers.
Right. Well, and the one thing that I will say though, which I think is important, which is probably, there are certain things we could deep dive in here, things that we will literally glance over in a sentence, right? And I can see some of the folks that are attending here that are going to be like, well, there's a lot to that, like some of the things we mentioned.
Yeah.
You also then at some point, once you've infected the organization and people are backing it, and you're starting to see some buy-in, right? At some point, people are going to want to make some decisions from this information. So at some point, the organization has to codify the program in such a way that says, this report is our source of truth, right? It contains the most truthiness of everything. So Steve, the Power BI report you've been working on that you've got at your desk is great for you to think about things, but if we're making decisions, it's off of this report, right? So I think over time, your program, once it evolves some legs and people are like, yeah, this is going to be a thing. I think people can start it. The tool is so powerful that allows people to explore this information and look at it and mash it and help them do their jobs. But you also want to make sure that as you're building out your program, that you start thinking about, where are our hard and fast areas that we're going to want to say that's the report we're all going to live off of. And as George and I have talked about before, one of the first things you do in any one of these programs is you dive in, as you pick your poison, as you pick your report, as you pick the first place to start, you have to define a lot of different things right up front. Like, and a lot of it just comes back to a standard vocabulary, a data dictionary. Like, what is revenue, right? Does that include sales tax? Does it not include sales tax? Does it include this part? Is it for department only? Is it for the entire organization, right? Do we have any write backs on it? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah. What do we do with intercompany? Yeah.
Yeah. And so those things can vary from department to department. So this one person could be pulling on revenue data to come in and start making some decisions in a meeting, and they're looking at it totally the wrong way because everybody else is using this other source of truth. And that's for another webinar. That's a totally different webinar. But those are things that are good problems to have, because now people are adopting your product, which is awesome. Is there anything, before we get into Q&A, George, is there anything that it went by way faster than I thought it would. Is there anything you wanted to touch on that I talked over because I'm obnoxious?
No, let's take on a question or two.
All right, Haley, why don't you let us know what people want to know?
All right. So first question is from Andrew. Hi, Andrew.
Not this Andrew, different Andrew.
No, Andrew M. With the new features in Synapse Analytics, where do you see that fitting in for smaller companies that might not have a lot of data, but it's in a lot of places and needs a lot of prep? Do you recommend a traditional data warehouse, a data lake, a combination of the two, or just using Synapse?
Well, it depends. So right now, and I love the concept of Synapse, right? It is hey, this is just real talk, right? It's expensive right now. So for a smaller organization, if you have the budget and the data to support implementing Synapse, that's a possibility, right? But given what I just heard, my recommendation would be, well, I'd have questions, right? A traditional data lake is really good for storing really non-conventional data, right? So data that doesn't come from a relational source. My advice. So let's just make an assumption here that there is some of that unstructured or semi-structured data that belongs in a lake, but there's also some source system data from a regular relational source, your ERP, your HRMS, your CRM, right? And we want to create that layer of abstraction in between source system and reporting so that we're not, well, for a number of reasons, right? We can standardize terms. We don't have to necessarily hammer the source system every time we want to do reporting. So I think, from that perspective, I think my recommendation would be probably more like what started to, the revelation that's starting to come out is it's the lake house, right? So that's kind of the combination of that first in the modern the modern cloud data platform. That's the first evolution, right? So you'll have kind of that first line being staging my relational data sources, and then also having the lake for my semi-structured or unstructured data sources, and then have Power BI on top of that.
That was awesome. I got a question. It's for you, George, and then I'll turn it back over to Haley. Where's James Harden going? That's what I need to know.
Part of me,
basketball guy.
So I think he's going to be with Houston at least until around the All-Star break, right? And if Houston turns out to be a good team, I could see him sticking here. But if I don't know much about Tillman Fertitta. I've seen his reality TV show. He seems like a pretty hard-nosed guy. I don't think he's not going to just make a trade to make a trade, right? If he, I think after the kind of after the All-Star break, if James Harden still wants to leave, I kind of see him going to Miami. That's kind of what I
really?
think.
All right, I'll hold you to that.
I don't know if Jimmy Butler wants him, but it's kind of what
no,
makes sense.
Whatever he's been doing, it's included cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
So
I don't see.
Get a new nickname. He's going to be the Round Mound too.
Yeah, I don't see him making a deal with the devil with Daryl Morey. I think they're too smart for that. So.
All right, fair enough. All right, what else we got, Haley? What other questions?
All right, so Sandra is having trouble getting her end users to switch from row and column style reporting to dashboard-based analysis. Do you have any tips or tricks to assist with this transition?
Ooh, that is a webinar in and of itself. But here goes. Right. So this is something that we see everywhere, and I'm sure those of you who've been doing BI for a while, you've seen this as well, right? People are used to their tabular style reports. That's really all they want. Just give me my data, keep this interactive stuff, just keep it away from me. I don't need it. It's all voodoo, right? So I think there's a few things we can think about here. One is education, right? That's the easy one out of the gate, right? We have to start educating our potential customers on what the product does, right? What's the product? What's its benefit? This is done through demos, actual product training, going to setting up internal user groups at your company, going to external user group meetings. It's a shameless plug for the pug that we do in Houston. Iron Edge is the
pug. That's what you should call it. The shameless pug.
The shameless pug. We just rebranded it. It kind of second, I'd say kind of approach that. This is a mistake I've made in the past, right? Of not being understanding enough when you encounter that, right? So just trying to shoving it down someone's throat because you think it's the right way to do things, right? Be a little empathetic. I think I really believe this. Most people are very realistic and they're open to change that helps their day to day, but not if you just force it on them, right? We're Americans. We're very independent, right? We need to be, lots of times we need to be coached. We need to be coddled. We need to be stakeholdered, right? We need to bring people into the fold and kind of work them to the point of acceptance. I think you also have to understand, why is there resistance to this, right? Like I said, most people, I firmly believe this, right? Most people, they're open to things that will improve their day to day. So you got to understand their resistance. So people who, oftentimes I find people who are highly resistant to this, these are your your analysts, right? Your financial analysts, your business analysts, who have been functioning as data hubs and report assemblers over the years, right? And so they're the people who've been running the reports, putting spreadsheets together, and then probably making visualizations and sending that up the chain, right? That's their job. They see a tool like this come along, they say, oh no, I'm about to be automated. I'm not going to have a job anymore once this goes in. And I think for those people, if you can get to that level of understanding, it's really helping them see that no, now you can actually do your job, right? Now you can actually do the analyst part of your job and not the data hub part, not be a data hub like you've become, right? So now instead of assembling data, you can start analyzing it. You can start finding why, steps that you need to take, right? And communicate that up the chain instead of just throwing data up the chain.
Well, and when you deal with people like that too,
Yeah.
what I've found is once you turn them, they are as strong as they were advocating against you, they will advocate for your product, right?
Yep. Like I said, this could be a webinar in and of itself. I'll say other forms of resistance to this that I've seen is, again, just real talk, right? Dirty laundry, right? People want to be able to sanitize their data from their domain, right? Their business area before it goes up the chain, right? They don't necessarily want full transparency, right? They may not necessarily want the VP having unfiltered and unfettered access to the data, right? Sometimes it isn't always as nefarious as it might seem, right? Sometimes these people do have to really look at the data and craft the appropriate message so that it's communicated correctly, right? I've seen it both ways, right? Where people want to hide their skeletons, but it's also, people also need to perform that buffer. So with them, you can take the tact of, all right, here let's make you a citizen BI developer, right? Let's show you, like Andrew's question, right? Here we've created this lake house for you. Let's show you how to do it. Let's get you up to speed and involved so you can be that middleman. And then, like I said, I think these people, right, once the people who are highly resistant to this, and it happens at all levels of the organization, right? So if it happens at the top, right, let's just be honest, you've got a real job on your hands, right? So if the guy, the person at the top demands their 500-page report every week, that's probably what they're going to get, right? So changing that type of behavior it's tough, right? It's very tough to have that trickle down.
Well, and that comes back to picking your poison, right?
That's right.
Maybe you don't want to go into the audit and governance reports, right, that are required for, the auditors. Like that's probably not where you want to start because they expect it to be in some sort of paginated view and printed out and put into a PowerPoint deck and whatever. Right. So sometimes there's end rounds. But we need to hit one more question and then we're going to call it. So Haley, you got one more for us?
One more question. It looks like Justin has one about getting started with their first BI project and if there are any business functions that he should be wary of. And then what if it's mandated?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be necessarily wary of it, but we talked about, we kind of talked about, well, we already talked about this, right? So there's pixel perfect reporting requirements. So don't expect to generate your balance sheet, your income statement, cash flows out of Power BI. There's tools that are purpose built for that type of reporting. And we could, again, that's a webinar in and of itself of, of the needs of financial reporting versus the needs of financial analysis. If your project is mandated and you really don't have any in control, and it may not be the best fit for BI, or let's just go and say it is not a good fit for BI, right? So one, we've talked about people who are resistant to BI. We won't go down that rabbit hole again. But again, if it isn't, It's really on you or the project management team or the leadership team for that project. If it's not the right fit, you have to communicate that back, right? You have to propose an alternative solution. If it's not BI, you have to, move that, make sure that project ends up in the right team, with the right team, not necessarily your team. You have to do that or you're complicit, right? If you just agree to it and take it, you're as much as at fault as the person who mandated that this project that's not a fit for BI is BI.
Well, you should also
Yeah.
be careful too, which I've seen before, right? Power BI is pretty badass. It does a lot of really neat stuff. I've seen it where if you're not on top of your requirements properly, you try to make Power BI an application.
That's right.
Right. And it's really not built for that. Like that's why there's Power Apps. That's why there's Flow. That's why there's other stuff like complementing the Power Platform so that you can bolt on these other things. But, turning Power BI into this hub of communication and data input and all these other things like may not be the right fit for the product. So really, kind of getting an idea at the beginning, right? When we're looking at something, even if it's mandated, to sit down, even in an agile format and go, okay, explain to me what our requirements really are. What is this epic and how are we going to build it out? Because I don't understand, like if you start getting into your stories and your stories are focused around things that you're like, I want the product to push, when I push a button, then all of a sudden like this report spits out in this other place. And then somebody like, and you're like, this is a visualization tool. Like you can fix data in it with the right stuff, but it's not an application, right? So I think there are certain, you can go all the way from, is this good a report, is this good data, is this a good use of the business function, all the way to, is this a good use of the tool, right? I think there's a spectrum there that you can hit.
Well said.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us. A reminder, we will be posting this on the website in the next day or two. So we'll have it recorded and up. You can always reach out to us if you're a client. And if you have any questions, feel free. Otherwise, get with our sales team. Cassandra Richard will help Sherpa you through the process of doing work with us. But we wanted to wish you all happy holidays. Have a safe new year. Stay Corona free if possible. And George, damn fine work, sir. That was fun.
This was fun. Yeah, we'll have to do it again.
Absolutely. Okay. Take care, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.